We're going to go through the maintenance for all of the 654 series winches. First, your cable must be spooled up on the drum evenly. Not too much to one side or the other, not too much in the middle. Spool it across evenly and wrap it back across the other way. For maintenance on your cable, you'll want to use a light penetrating lubricant oil. It keeps your cable soft and keeps it from corrosion. You'll also want to keep away from extreme angles or corners because you're going to cut your cable. As for oil, you've got oil in two separate housings. This is your main gear housing, this is your transfer housing. Each housing will hold about 6 to 8 ounces of oil. The only maintenance you need to do here is if you're leaking, you will need to replace your seals and gaskets. Other than that, just change your oil periodically, maybe once a year or so. Change more frequently if you use your winch heavily. You do want to run your winch every so often. Every month, spool out the cable about 5 feet to keep all the contacts in the motor good. It will also keep your cable fresh. If your winch just sits, your contacts tend to stick from corrosion and it can actually rip parts of the armature off, so you will damage your winch just from neglect. On to wiring. You have your main power wire coming from your solenoid assembly. This will run to a cutoff switch like our PS025. Then you will run from that switch back to the positive terminal on the battery. You can use some sort of rubber conditioner on these to make sure that you don't rot your coating. Make sure everything is clean. You want to make sure there are no cuts or frays in your wire. You can always arc or short out against your frame or anywhere this is run, so always make sure there are no cuts on this. On your terminals, you want to make sure that you have a good tight connection at the switch, battery, or whatever you are hooked up to. We also recommend dielectric grease to help prevent corrosion. Use the grease on the power side. For a ground, use one of these 3 bolts. Don't use the motor as a ground. No terminals are grounds, just these 3 bolts. These are the grounds that you will need. It will need to be the same size as your power wire, at least a number 4 if not a number 2. This will go directly to the negative terminal on the battery, not to the frame. On your wires going to your motor from your solenoid assembly, you've got 3 wires, 3 terminals. You'll notice these wires are about the same size as your power wire. You want to make sure you condition them to make sure they don't rot. Make sure there are no cuts, no frays, and again, on the terminals on the motor, make sure they are tight and corrosion free. For your plug maintenance, you will see 4 terminals. Each one of them is actually made up of 2 pieces. Over time, they will compress. You can get a small flat tip screwdriver and spread them out just a little bit. That will make a good connection on your remote. There is a little bit of grease in there. That's the dielectric grease. You can always use that to keep any type of corrosion out and to keep water off of your terminals. On the other side, all you have is grease. You have 2 grease zerks, and you will want to grease these periodically. If this ever runs dry, especially up north where a lot of salt is used to melt the ice and snow, it will freeze up. Your free spool capabilities will be gone. The only thing you can do is to use an anti-seize, or you may have to replace your whole housing. To grease these, get a grease gun. You put it on each of the grease zerks, and you will want to pump enough grease until you start seeing grease seep out between the clutch handle and the housing. On the other side, you will see it seep out where the clutch lever ends.